Who's the most powerful company in the world? Most people would probably say Google, Facebook, Apple, or Amazon. But what if I told you that there was a singular company behind all of these? In fact, this singular company not only controls big tech, but they actually control the entire corporate world. Yet you've probably never even heard their name. This company goes by the name SAP, and they're the number one enterprise application provider in the entire world. They offer CRM solutions, SaaS solutions, SCM solutions, and of course, ERP solutions. And virtually every company that you can think of relies on SAP for their backend solutions. This includes 98% of the 100 most valuable brands, 86% of the Fortune 500, and 92% of the Forbes 2000. And it's not just corporations that depend on SAP either. Some of the most powerful governments around the world also rely on SAP. This includes the US, Canada, India, the UK, France, Australia, and many more. SAP's customers are responsible for 87% of total global commerce, which works out to $46 trillion. Considering this stronghold on the enterprise market, I don't think you'd be surprised to hear that by nature, SAP also has a stronghold on the consumer market. In fact, 77% of the entire world's transactional revenue goes through SAP. This translates to a whopping $16 trillion per year. With so much power, you would think that SAP would be up to no good, similar to some of the financial giants that also run the world. But somehow, in their 50-year history, SAP has maintained a relatively clean slate. Really, the only bad things that you can find about the company are that they've had some intellectual property lawsuits from competitors, and they've had a few cases of bribery. There's also a community that thinks that SAP software is overpriced and not actually that good. But that's not an evil offense. Keep in mind, SAP could literally blackmail the entire world or run any company that they want out of business. So here's the story of SAP and how they became the most powerful company that you've never heard of. Taking a look back, the story of SAP dates back to the early 1970s, ironically to Xerox. As you may know from one of our previous videos, Xerox basically invented the computer, the laptop, the internet, and programming, and gave it all away. It turns out that you can add SAP onto that list as well. The story goes that when Xerox exited the computer hardware manufacturing industry in 1971, they asked IBM to migrate their business systems to IBM technology. And to do this, Xerox offered IBM the rights to their SDS SAP software, which was at the time worth about 80 grand. That's equivalent to about $588,000 today. 5 German engineers from IBM's AI department were initially assigned to this project. But due to some unknown corporate reasons, they would eventually be switched to another project. These 5 engineers, however, didn't want to switch. They had witnessed firsthand just how much companies were willing to pay to outsource backend solutions. So instead of switching to another IBM project as instructed, these 5 would quit IBM and establish their own company called System Analysis and Program Development, or SAP, in June of 1972. Their first product was quite straightforward and had to do with tracking employee punch cards. IBM was the industry leader within this sector, so these 5 were pretty familiar with the current systems and their capabilities. One of the biggest shortfalls of the IBM punch card system was that it recorded data mechanically, and every night someone would have to process this data manually. For obvious reasons, this was undesirable, and SAP aimed to eliminate this hassle with their RF system. Unlike IBM systems, the RF system processed punch card data electronically and automatically stored the data onto an enterprise-wide database. This made the data easily accessible for anyone within the organization, whether it's the accounting team or the payroll team. While this was convenient, it also required that the company maintain a database. This might be viable for someone like IBM or Xerox, but the local factory had no idea how to operate or maintain a database. So in addition to the system, SAP also offered regular maintenance and upgrades, and this is where the money was really at. At first, this was actually super easy given that there was plenty of downtime. These systems were only used during the day, Monday through Friday, so you could upgrade a system during nights and on the weekend. But nowadays, there isn't nearly as big of a window, given that downtime is extremely expensive in the modern world. So SAP has had to become quite creative when it comes to maintenance and upgrades. Anyway, SAP would further refine the system and create their first flagship product, the SAP R1. SAP's first customer was a chemical company in Germany, but it didn't take them long to onboard a bunch of local companies. And from there, it didn't take long for SAP to become the go-to company for all-in-one backend solutions. Over the years, SAP has grown their product line aggressively. In fact, they currently offer 309 products, but most of this can be watered down into 5 main categories, starting with SAP ERP, or SAP Enterprise Resource Planning. This is really the core of SAP, and it covers all of the main functions that any business would need. This includes supply chain management, product lifecycle management, human capital management, financial management, and customer relationship management. All of these accomplish exactly what they sound like. The supply chain management software, for example, helps companies keep track of inventory, analyze demand, create projections of supply requirements, manage logistics, and so on. Similarly, the financial management software makes it easy to track expenditures, calculate taxes, manage your assets, and ensure that you're compliant with government regulations. If a company says that they're using SAP, they're probably talking about one of their ERP products. If not, it's more than likely that they're talking about SAP's second most popular offering, which is SAP S/4HANA. This is actually a relatively new product from SAP, having been released in 2015. SAP S/4HANA is basically just an upgraded version of SAP ERP. It seeks to use more advanced technologies such as parallel processing to make SAP ERP more efficient for larger corporations. This allows for SAP systems to operate on a virtually real-time basis. But if SAP S/4HANA is substantially better than SAP ERP, wouldn't every corporation just use S/4HANA? Well, no, because the better performance comes along with a crapload of extra responsibilities. Essentially, you need a bunch of in-house IT staff that ensures that S/4HANA operates as intended. For companies like Apple and Google who already have a bunch of IT staff, springing for this is a no-brainer. But for a company like Coca-Cola, the pitch isn't as appealing. For companies that don't want to do a bunch of in-house management, the most appealing option may be SAP S/4HANA Cloud. This offering is basically identical to SAP S/4HANA, except for one crucial difference. Instead of running on in-house databases and infrastructure, this runs on the cloud. Companies can choose to deploy the software onto AWS or Microsoft Azure. This substantially reduces the amount of maintenance that the companies have to do. But in exchange, companies give up much of the flexibility and customization that are characteristic of the other offerings. Moving on to the last two product categories from SAP, we have SAP Business One and SAP Business by Design. These are essentially light versions of SAP ERP that are tailored to smaller businesses. SAP Business One, for example, is meant for companies with up to 350 employees, while SAP Business by Design is meant for companies with 250 to 1,500 employees. But at the core of it, these offerings accomplish the same things, just for a different set of companies. As you can see, SAP basically covers all business needs for all businesses, so it's not surprising that they're so dominant within the industry. Hearing all this, you're probably wondering just how much all of this costs. SAP does post some pricing data for their products, but really, every SAP deployment is handled on a case-by-case basis, especially for larger companies. So it's unlikely that any two companies pay the exact same amount. But here's a ballpark estimate of what a company may expect to pay. The average ERP instance uses about 2 to 4 terabytes. The average HANA deployment is supposed to reduce this substantially. If we assume a 50% reduction, we get an instance of about 1 to 2 terabytes. According to Brightwork Research, this translates to an upfront cost of $6.2 million, along with an annual maintenance fee of $1.24 million. Larger companies can likely expect to pay an upfront fee in the tens of millions, along with an annual maintenance fee of several $million. And that's just the fee that you have to pay SAP. For most deployments, you need in-house staff, and this is very much true for the juggernauts. Amazon, for example, currently has 42 openings for SAP-related roles. Google has 28 openings for SAP, and Apple has 81 openings for SAP. And that's just the open roles. All of these companies likely have several hundred, if not over 1,000 full-time staff that just maintain these systems. And given that solutions architects demand quite a high salary, ERP likely costs these companies well into the hundreds of millions, if not billions, every single year. But the truth is that there's no way around this. Really, the only other options you have are to use Oracle, who charges the same amount, or you can develop your own in-house system, but usually that's even more expensive. Not to mention, it'll just distract the company from being able to focus on growing the core business. So basically every entity that you can think of end up using SAP, Oracle, or some combination of the two. Given all this power, you would think that SAP would be up to no good. But as we discussed, while there is some discussion regarding whether SAP's products are actually worth it or not, there's not much discussion regarding the morality of the company as a whole. If anything, it's actually the exact opposite. SAP's employees are extremely happy with the company and its leadership. SAP has a total of 26,000 reviews on Glassdoor with an average rating of 4.4 stars. Additionally, 92% of employees would recommend SAP to a friend, and 91% approve of the CEO. On top of this, 68% of employees would not leave SAP even if they were offered more money, and 83% are excited to go to work every day. Clearly, SAP is doing something right, and this is reflected in their financials. SAP regularly pulls in $30 billion per year, and they boast net income of $4 billion per year. But these numbers are nothing in comparison to the true power that they hold. In the end, we often complain about X or Y company being a monopoly and having too much power. But oftentimes, some of the most powerful companies are background companies that we've never even heard of. SAP is very much one of these companies, as they basically control all of the business software used by the entire world. If this much power fell into the wrong hands, who knows what would happen? But so far, SAP has proven to be very much qualified to handle this responsibility. And looking forward, it doesn't look like SAP is going anywhere. In fact, if anything, it seems like companies are shifting from Oracle to SAP for greater flexibility and to avoid Oracle's antics with intellectual property. So you better start keeping tabs on SAP because they're here to stay and they're only growing stronger by the day. But that's just what I think. Were you familiar with SAP? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you hope that SAP gets some serious competition. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.